Jennifer from ThinkDiff. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an autistic ADHDer. I'm here today to talk to you about how you can understand and embrace neurodiversity in your organisation. So just covering off why you might be here. Have you got people maybe in your team who are neurodivergent? Maybe you're wondering how to manage them better. Maybe you're wondering what neurodiversity even is. Maybe you want to embrace this as an opportunity, but you're not sure where to start. And I hear that all the time. So hopefully I'll cover off all of these in the presentation, and if not, there'll be time for questions at the end. So what does diversity and inclusion as a broad topic do for our businesses? Well, the research, which I'm not going to read out, basically time and time again tells us that it gives us massive business benefits in terms of performance, in terms of financial performance, in terms of every facet of our business. So, you can go up and research this stuff yourself, but, the research agrees. And it's something that if you invest in, it pays back tenfold. And a really big one I did want to cover off briefly that doesn't often get talked about is that our customers are diverse. All of it, the world is the customers are the people that we're serving. And so, when it comes to that, if you think about, I always think of it that a business exists to serve its customers, and it does that through its people, but equally, the best businesses make it easy to do business with them. So what better way to remove barriers and make it easy to do business with you than to think about diversity and inclusion and how you can do that in terms of your customer base. So it's really worth thinking about the outside world and inputs as well as what's going on inside your organisation, because the two obviously marry up. And then, other than stats, the other side of this is a personal story I wanted to share, which I think brings this to life a little bit. So in the early days of ThinkDiff, I spent a lot of time doing research, speaking to different people, and I spoke to the CEO of I and they are the company that roll out Cyber Essentials to across the whole of the UK. And they have intentionally designed their organisation in a way that has meant that they've actually managed to hit a target of 50% of their organisation being neurodivergent. And one of the things that the CEO said to me that I will never forget, and that's what I wanted to share with you because I think it's just so powerful, is there's not a problem that we cannot solve in our business. I just thought that was so powerful, I had to share it. And, having people from a neurodiversity and a neuroinclusion point of view, having people who see things differently leads to creativity, innovation, and better problem solving. From the horse's mouth. So I'm not going to say anything about this slide other than please consider this as a concept as we go through the rest of the presentation. So what do we mean by neurodiversity? It literally means brain diversity, and every single person's got a brain and it's unique. And so neurodiversity actually means everyone in this room. We are all neurodiverse. Think of it as gender diversity, ethnic diversity, cultural diversity. That's exactly what it's there to describe within society. And underneath that then is a group or a term called, and that is neurodivergence, which is they're often confused and used incorrectly. So neurodivergence basically means brain divergence. And it's anyone whose brain diverges from what is considered the normal average way. So if you consider that we've all got cognitive traits, I do that because it's like a circle, cognitive traits, and that's how psychologists label our brain. So we've all got them, they all operate differently, hence the neurodiversity aspect. But with neurodivergence, they diverge, so you might score highly in at least a couple of areas, and to be diagnosed, and it has to impact your life significantly to obtain that diagnosis. So you can't just wander in and just go, oh yeah, they do really significant testing and interviewing and all the rest of it. And so if you think of it that this graph here you can see there that the diagnostic threshold is part of the graph. Well, you might have people in your organisation who score highly in a few of those areas, but actually aren't diagnosable. And so, they may come up against some similar challenges to those who are actually diagnosed. I'm not trying to compare them, but I think my point is that neurodiversity as a concept is really important, because what we should be focusing on is that, we are all different, and it's about that, and it's about embracing that. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about individuals, so neurodivergent individuals. I really wanted to bring to life their experience to give people an insight into what it might be like in the workplace or in life to be neurodivergent, because there is a lack of understanding. Rightly so, unless you are neurodivergent, you're not going to understand the experience like anything else. And I wanted to bring that to life, like I said. So there is this lack of understanding, which means that, often it can be quite isolating, but equally, there are barriers. So there are barriers everywhere. There are barriers in society, which means there's barriers in schools, colleges, universities, and workplaces. And those barriers can be physical barriers, or they could be barriers such as stigma. There's different ways of looking at it. But the point is those barriers and the rigidity of society makes it difficult when you're different to navigate the world. And so you often hear it said that the world isn't designed for us. I've heard that quite a few times. And it's easy to say, and you might kind of go, that's a bit of it could be a throwaway comment, but if you really think about it and stop and go, wow, okay, the world isn't designed for us, then, it might even resonate with you. So it's quite a powerful statement. But when you look at kind of those with neurodivergent conditions and their early years, so the formative years, that's where we kind of, form our view of the world and how to act. Well, neurodivergent individuals often get lots and lots of signals to say, don't be you. You don't conform. You're too loud. You're too quiet. You're too weird. You're too something. So you get all of these signals coming at you from caregivers and teachers and whoever else throughout your life. And there's a stat actually that I think is quite interesting and displays the point the best, which is ADHD children by the age of 12 have had 20,000 more negative messages from those around them about themselves than the general population. That's just to give you a bit of an insight into what that could be like and how it might affect a child, an individual, and what their self-esteem might look like. And lots of younger children with neurodivergent conditions at this point have already developed anxiety and other things because the world is inherently anxious for them. Trying to always look out on how to behave and how to act. And that lends itself then to a concept called masking. Now, we all mask at different times in our lives for little periods of time. Like you might ask, you might put on a brave face, you've heard the saying, or you might smile on a day where you really don't feel like it. That's another example. But if you're neurodivergent, masking is a way of life. It's a survival technique, and it's something that you employ in order to fit in and to survive and to be accepted. And, it can be really, really quite draining because you're doing it most of the time. And that's not an under exaggeration either. So, you imagine that you're being sent all these negative messages. The way to deal with that is to pretend to not be loud and to go inwards, or pretend to be maybe more socially active than you might otherwise feel comfortable doing. This all adds to the load on the person. And then we get onto the nervous system. So the best way I've heard to describe it, and it really did resonate with me, is that being neurodivergent, and with some conditions for some people, is like wearing your nervous system on the outside of your body. So that's how powerful it is and how painful it can be when you've got things like sounds, taste, smells, touch, all being thrown at you when your nervous system is that sensitive. And that's external stimuli coming at you as well as internal stimuli, like your emotions and things, can be really, really powerful. And so, you know, again, think about the load on the person and think about that experience, especially in kind of society today. So then you've got the thinking part of the brain. Now, neurodivergent individuals quite often use that prefrontal cortex more than somebody who isn't. And let me explain that as well. So if you imagine someone who finds social interaction difficult for whatever reason, it could be for any reason. It could be because sometimes you might interrupt. It could be because you were really constantly thinking about the rules of what to say next. But you use that cognitive part of that prefrontal cortex a lot more. And that is the most energy draining part of your brain. So again, we're talking about load and battery and energy. And then on top of that is more research has been done to say that actually at rest, some neurodivergent individuals' nervous systems are 40% active at rest. So 40% more active than someone who isn't neurodivergent. So they've only got 60% capacity in their battery to start off with, let alone all of the other stuff being thrown at them. And then that doesn't even take into account how your brain actually operates and works in the world. So, you know, finding it really difficult to be organised, to prioritise all of this stuff that executive functioning does for you. Not only does it get worse when the load on you is more, but also imagine the shame and the stigma that comes with not being able to do things that other people find really easy to do. So this is kind of what you're dealing with in the life of a neurodivergent individual. What's the cost of that? Well, significant, as you can imagine. So autistic, these are some quotes actually from some of my coaching clients. I've got lots and lots of these, but I'm not going to read them all out, but I'll leave them there for you. But just to give you, again, a bit of a taste of what it might be like. But you've got this stat here, so that's called out. So autistic adults are 9 times more likely to die by suicide. For ADHD, they're 5 times more likely to attempt suicide. And if you think of it in terms of mental health, then a lot of people who are neurodivergent have coexisting mental health conditions, as you can imagine, based on what I've just gone through. But actually, it's worse than that in a way, because with the masking, you fly under the radar because you're so good at fitting in, so you don't get diagnosed maybe when you're younger, and then you end up as an adult who has tried lots, you feel like so anxious, maybe you suffer with depression because you can't quite fit in and you always feel a bit different, which must be hard. So then you've been misdiagnosed with things, and standard interventions don't work because they don't work with your brain. They're not designed for your brain, and so actually you feel more shame and guilt as a result of that as well. So by the time you reach diagnosis, you know, you really are desperate looking for answers. And then I wanted to cover off the journey to disclosure, because I think it's helpful for you to see what might be presented to you as a business with somebody who's come in and letting you know that they've got this diagnosis. First of all, lots of people don't actually disclose. I'm going to give a figure of 40%. CIPD reckon it's more like 30 something, and then I've seen another statistic in the 50s. So it's anywhere between there, but it's still high. And that's because of fear. That's fear of the consequences. So you've got people in your business who are maybe not performing, maybe having time off for absences and trying to get support for their mental health, but it's not making a difference. You know, maybe you've got people like that in your business, and actually that's pretty sad. Think about the emotional journey we've just talked about, all of the isolation that must be felt. And there's literally a lack of support. But worse still, when you get diagnosed, there's no support either. So you get diagnosed after all this time, after going through all of this, and you know, it's the same. Actually, it's the same story for people who are younger that I've interviewed as well. But actually, you know, you've gone through all of that, and you get given the diagnosis, and you're not given any further support. So you're pretty much, you might get given the National Autistic Society's website or something like that, but actually you're pretty much left to your own devices to figure out all of this stuff I've just talked about. This is stuff that I found out after. Nobody ever told me this. Nobody even explained the difference between neurodiversity and neurodivergence as an example. So you know, you don't get anything. And can you imagine, like, you've finally got your answer and then you're just left completely alone to figure that out? And so by the time somebody comes to you to tell you that they've got a diagnosis, that's what's going on for them. And that's why I've got here, I think this is just so important to consider. So day one for you of knowing that that person's got a diagnosis is like day 10,000 plus for them, potentially. And they're carrying all of that load into that conversation. So it's a moment that matters. And it's where someone's trying to finally breathe out and get some support. And actually, it's worth considering at this point. So when they go to one of your managers or to your HR person, how well are you responding to that based on everything you know now? And there is a human element, but actually it's not just about that. It's about legal obligations as well, because you need to know what those are. And the Disability Discrimination Act of 2010 protects disabled people within the workplace, and it protects their rights. So somebody who would come under that term would need to show that the condition had a substantial and long-term negative effect on their ability to do normal daily activities. And that means that most neurodivergent conditions would likely be included in here. It's worth also knowing that when it comes to neurodivergence, tribunal cases have quadrupled in the last 3 years. And there's no cap on those claims either. They can go into triple figures, and they have. And the human elements to that just increase the risk. So all the stuff we've talked about, that increases the risk for your business, because that person, when they don't get the understanding and support, guess where all that goes? All that anger and resentment and that frustration. So how can you achieve balance with this? How can you protect your business, and how can you look after your people? Well, awareness and understanding, key. Like, not just for you, but for the whole organisation, so everybody is aware of all of this. And that might be the first time in somebody's life they've had that level of awareness and understanding around them. Adjustments and accommodations, that is a legal requirement as part of what we talked about earlier. But the thing is, they're often like so easy to implement, low cost, and they can be so helpful to the person. And we're going to cover that off very shortly, so that hopefully you can see that more and how that might help. Then you've got training managers in HR. They're the people who are on the front line, who speak to people every single day. They provide and make or break, as I've heard it, describe the employee experience. So they need to know how to respond in those moments effectively. And then keeping everything human to human. You know, I see it all too often. Somebody comes and lets their manager know, and the result is, because of trying to protect the business and trying to protect and trying to do the best for the person, and everybody's kind of scuffling around not knowing what to do, that it takes weeks for people to get back to people. This formality suddenly goes from being a human being and having a conversation with your manager to emails and meetings and all of this stuff. So you already felt isolated, and now you feel even more so. And so that is a risk, because you might, a lot of times, the coaching clients I've got are actually off work as a result of that. And you want to turn this risk into an opportunity. That's the big thing here. You can, and it's really easy to do. Don't wait for the problem and then react. It can be too late at that point. So there's things that you can do right now. I wanted to cover off inclusion. I love this quote. It really resonated with me, because we're about to start to talk about the environments that you create in the workplace and some things that you can do. So inclusion is involving someone despite their differences. It's not including them and expecting them to act like you. I'm just leaving that one there because I really like it. And it frames this nicely. I love this graphic. It can be used in so many different contexts. How we're going to use it today is, if you look at the 3 different windows, you've got equality, equity, and liberation. Liberation, otherwise known as inclusivity. So look at equality. So what's going on there? Well, you can see the 3 people are very different, and the person on the end can't actually participate in the baseball game. Participation, imagine that in your organisation. Participation and performance. You have to be able to participate to perform. And so in this example, the person might be looking through the nook of the fence, but equally, for them to get a full view, they'd have to hoist themselves up onto that nasty, scaggy fence there and hold themselves up. And they can't do that for long. It's a lot of effort and hard work, which we talked about earlier. And so that's adding to the load as well. And so you can see how the person might have peaks and troughs in their performance. And some of you might have seen that already when it comes to employees with neurodivergent conditions. So I really like that as a visual representation. It really helps. Then you've got equity. So equity in this example, if you think of the boxes as the accommodations that we talked about earlier that you are legally obliged to put into place, so that's what that creates. So everybody can now participate and perform pretty much fully. I mean, you know, you'd have to get off the box obviously to get right, but pretty much fully. And so it's worth considering here one thing, one caveat. That's great, but if you do that and you don't consider the whole awareness and understanding piece and building a culture of inclusion and diversity in your business, what tends to happen is, without the awareness and understanding, the other people in the team go, well, why's that person got 2 boxes? I've got 1 box, or I've got no box. So it becomes resentment and special treatment rather than being seen for what it is, which is actually allowing that team member to participate fully in the team. And then there's liberation. So you can see no accommodations necessary, barriers removed. I always get asked, what are the barriers? Well, there's physical barriers to do with maybe office layouts and things you could be doing better there. But the biggest barrier is stigma and a lack of understanding. So, you know, when we can kind of work at creating that culture we're talking about, we can start to remove some of that. Journey, definitely a journey, but it's something that you can aim towards and start to take steps towards now. So it's worth considering, where are you? You know, you don't have to answer me. I'm not asking for an out loud answer. But where are you? Where's your organisation? Be honest with yourselves, and where do you want to be? Most businesses I work with are between equality and equity, and they do a bit of equity, but there's lots of gaps in that. So there's ways they could be doing it more effectively, not only protecting their business, but also looking after their people and helping them to perform. And then lastly, I just wanted to give some examples of accommodations because they're so easy, and I just want to go through them. So we got flexible working, clear roles and responsibilities, regular one-to-ones with managers, following up verbal instructions in writing, allowing for questions, agenda for meetings up front. If the meeting is flexible, so there is no agenda, then at least give the outcome or the purpose of the meeting. Time after meetings to add input in writing, quiet spaces in the office for concentration and D&D time, allowing people to bow out of, shape or reduce participation in social events without recourse, even subtle recourse. You know, Tim's not a team player, he didn't go to the team event. But was the team event designed to include Tim? Now, you know, you can't get this stuff right all the time, I'm not saying that, but actually, can you see how with us under the lens of neurodiversity, especially with us all having unique brains and the way we all work differently, this stuff would benefit everyone in your organisation. Some of it probably should be stuff we're doing anyway, but like if you can start to think about this and start to think about how you might put some of this in place, you can already start to break down those barriers, and it's really easy to do. And imagine unlocking the performance of everyone in the business. That's when you start to create those results we talked about in the first slide. So this is all about awareness and turning that into action. It's about embracing the benefits of diversity and inclusion, understanding the human side, knowing your legal obligations and taking action. So I've got some steps here just to run through as a bit of a reminder of some of the things we've gone through today. So first one, know your obligations as an employer, understand and support the human side, push awareness, educate managers in HR, create equity, embrace diversity and create inclusion, and mostly enjoy the results, because this is intentional effort that's required here and you do have to decide to do it. But once you do, you start to yield those performance results. not just for the individuals, but for the whole business. And I specialise I'm a neurodivergent coach or neurospecialist coach, so I coach neurodivergent individuals both privately and in workplace contexts. So to help them, in these moments we're talking about, I do that. And actually, the other side of what I do, my background's HR, senior HR. That was my previous role and my previous life. And I can come and help as a business consultant to help you to create environments that can achieve this. We recently launched our neuro-friendly organisational pledge. So that's from knowing, so what you've learned today, to actually doing. And it's a recognition about working towards being more neuro-friendly. And we can help you with linking it to business objectives, with giving you you get access to a roadmap to help you know what to do. And it's actually really, really inexpensive. So it's only £99 to sign up. And you can basically get me involved to do as little or as much as you like. The ethos of it, though, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the ethos is that it's all about getting everyone in the organisation involved in this and what you're trying to achieve. And so, it's okay to make some mistakes, and everyone's there in it together to help steer this. And like you imagine the possibilities of what you can achieve if you approach it in that manner. Other services that we provide, so company training and awareness, coaching for neurodivergent employees, I've covered that off. Workplace needs assessments, I didn't cover that off much, but if you think of going back to that graphic we had with the boxes, you need a specialist workplace needs assessor in neurodiversity, in my personal opinion, to be able to give that person the right boxes, to give them the participation and the performance. Not only is so complex, hopefully you can see how complex the issues can be, but actually the point is that there's coexisting conditions that often people might have, and if you can get the right partners to work with you, then you can start to unlock the benefits of this. Imagine how much money you're spending when somebody's off on long-term absence or is not performing. So this pays for itself, it really does. Then you've got the team integration workshops. So what we do there is we get all the team together, neurodivergent or not. So it's a big neurodiverse, happy family team workshop. And what we do is we look at everybody's preferences and their ways of working, so everybody's included. And we look at what we can do to facilitate that in the team. And we link that to team objectives and business objectives, and we celebrate each other's strengths. The team walk away being able to collaborate better, definitely, but the manager walks away with a better understanding of their team as well. We do Ripple strategy coaching and services. So that is where somebody comes to you with a diagnosis, and we can come in and help coach the person. And there is access to work and things like that, and funding available to do that in some organisations. There are criteria, but basically we also help coach the manager, so the manager can get to know exactly how to manage that person better, which is like situationally gives you the best chance of success, so you reduce that risk, and then you ripple that outwards then across the organisation. So it's about looking at you might take that as just a small step to actually how to tackle this. And then you've got HR training and awareness. My old life was HR, so more than comfortable with that. And then manager coaching, training and awareness if that's required as well. So that's just some of the services we offer. And then lastly, look, this is a marathon, not a sprint. If you want to reduce risk, capitalise on opportunity and create a differentiator in your business, then just come and talk to me. This stuff, like, it isn't as expensive as people think. There is effort involved, there is, but the rewards are worth it. Has anyone got any questions?